So here we are back. I was just thinking, Theresa, we need to make a commercial about your book, because here is her book, Navigating the Caregiver River, which is absolutely fabulous. And I know you're going to love her session. At all the previous times Theresa has been with us, people are like, wow, she really helped me a lot. I can really relate. So where are you today, my friend?
Oh, hello, Linda. So good to see you. I am about an hour from Memphis, so we're kind of in the country. It's a beautiful day here, so yeah.
Good. Oh, it's so fabulous to see you. So without further ado, the floor is all yours.
All righty. It looks like the screen sharing is disabled, so. Yeah, maybe the conference tech can help me share my screen. There we go. Awesome.
Okay,
Perfect.
great.
All righty. Okay. So thank you again, Linda, and thank you all for being here during National Family Caregiver Month. And as Linda said, I'm Theresa Wilbanks with Sustainable Caregiving. Today's presentation is the third and the final in the Navigating the Caregiver River series. So if you attended or watched either of the first two sessions at the Connecting Caregivers Conference, you may recognize the beginning of this presentation, but we will be discussing 4 new strategies today. Life is like a river. Sometimes it sweeps you gently along, and sometimes the rapids come out of nowhere. The river is a great metaphor for life, and it also resonates with the experience of caregiving. So I cared for my dad for 7 years, and he passed at the age of 99 in December 2020. And I come from a family of caregivers. At 17, I gave up my bedroom for my mom's mom, who moved in with us. My parents took care of dad's mom in their home until she turned 101. Care became too physically demanding and she went to a nursing home, and my folks visited her every day until she passed at 104. Still, when I began caring for dad, I had no idea what I was in for. It's a slippery slope from helping out to burning out, and I had slid into the flames. I knew I was not on a sustainable path. I was concerned about the effects of stress on my health. I was also worried that I would have significant regret about my relationship with dad, a relationship that seemed to be rapidly deteriorating in front of me. And I really wanted to understand why this role was so challenging. And did the caregiver gene skip me? And as I delved into the whys, it became clear that it was just hard, and my folks shielded that reality from me. But the need to understand why I was struggling led to lots of trial, error, tears. And as I deconstructed the experience and the turbulent emotions, it led me to a series of strategies that just helped me minimize the stress and ultimately improve my emotional and physical health. This path that I was on to a more sustainable experience, it also led to a more meaningful journey. I looked back at the first few years of caring for dad, and I knew that it didn't have to be so hard. And I wanted to help other family caregivers. So I became a certified caregiving consultant. I founded Sustainable Caregiving. And as I've shared before, this is how I met Linda. So basically, I was her stalker. I was given her book, Connecting Caregivers, by the owner of our home care company. And I highlighted sections and dog-eared pages, and I began following her work. And I finally met her and Lynn, her radio show co-host, at a holiday get-together where I confessed that I had been stalking her. I found Linda when I was a caregiver who needed help, and I was also on a path to help caregivers. So she became an inspiration as someone who cares for caregivers. And she couldn't have been more generous with her support, and still is. So thank you, Linda, and thank you for the opportunity to continue to learn at these conferences. Now, I would like to share with all of you some of what created a more sustainable path for me. We don't know how long we'll be in the caregiver role, which is one of the challenges. And sustainability is about incorporating the strategies that help us care for ourselves while we care for our family member, as long as needed. Now, these strategies allow me to flip the script from I have to be a caregiver to I get to be a caregiver. And with these strategies, in addition to my health improving, the relationship with Dad and I improved significantly. This is a photo of my husband, Dad, and I celebrating Dad's 98th birthday. So imagine your caregiving journey is like being in a raft on a river. The river has calm sections, obstacles, rapids, and a few waterfalls. At times, we feel like we've been tossed out of the raft and we're drowning. Storms pop up and the emotions swirl, the trifecta, guilt, anger, and resentment. The stress and overwhelm can be all consuming. Too much stress has a negative impact on our ability to think. We don't make our best decisions. And too much stress affects our health, our well-being, and our relationships suffer. When we employ certain strategies to protect our well-being, manage the emotions and the stress, the river doesn't change, but how we navigate the river changes. We step into the flow. So our caregiving experience will likely intensify as time goes on, and the strategies that work today may not work tomorrow. Likewise, the strategies that aren't a good fit today may be a big help next month. So set aside rather than discard the strategies that don't fit your current situation, because the current in the caregiver river will keep changing. So these strategies fit together like a unique puzzle, unique for you, your situation, your experience, and the strategies support each other. At first, it may seem like you're building a Jenga tower that continues to tumble. When you get the strategies dialed in, you have a stable tower, a sustainable caregiving foundation, or back to the caregiver river, you might consider it as your well-stocked life raft. The 12 strategies are divided into 3 categories. At the first conference a year ago, we talked about the strategies to prevent or recover from burnout. We discussed setting boundaries, self-care, cultivating compassion, and mindfulness. During the last conference in May, we discussed the strategies to reimagine control. So we talked about embracing the role, accepting help, reducing conflict, and transforming obstacles. Today, we'll discuss 4 strategies to help us manage the emotions. So let's talk about managing the turbulent emotions. The definition of emotion is instinctive or intuitive feeling as distinguished from reasoning or knowledge. And as we said, the caregiver trifecta of emotions includes guilt, anger, and resentment. Fear and frustration fuel the cycle of spinning thoughts and emotions, reducing our ability to think clearly or feel any sense of calm. When the pressure from these emotions build, the risk can include bursts of release in the form of angry reactions or harm to your health from holding in the negativity. However, there are strategies and steps that can help us quiet the fears and calm the storms. So the strategies to manage the emotions are venting to release the pressure, journaling to process the emotions, forgiving to free your heart and mind, and planning to ease the anxiety. So when you can regularly let out the fears and frustrations and prevent the pressure from building, the swirling subsides. When we forgive ourselves, family members, systems, our care recipient, we free up our mind space for more positive and productive pursuits. In addition, forgiveness allows us to maintain relationships and minimize stress and regret. Planning for the worries addresses another source of negative thoughts and emotions that can build to unmanageable levels. Caregiver worries are real, and these worries can cloud our thinking. They can cause us to feel powerless and overwhelmed. So creating a plan for each worry is empowering. And having a plan, it can help you set the concerns aside and calm your mind. The worry may become a reality, but with a plan, you're just better prepared to manage the situation. Ollie Anderson, author of Personal Revolutions, A Short Course in Realness, said, "Unleash in the right time and place before you explode at the wrong time and place." So why is venting to release the emotions important? Well, we've all at some point lost our cool and then felt remorse, wishing that we'd handled things differently. So, venting is talking about or releasing, unleashing your feelings regularly before the pressure builds. And venting is one way we can avoid the explosion and the ensuing regret. So, we all have different stress triggers, and caregiving is a trigger minefield. When we encounter our daily challenges, these challenges that spark intense emotional reactions, the pressure builds. So just imagine your thoughts, emotions, and feelings just flowing through you like a river, unobstructed and out to sea. Now imagine those thoughts, emotions, and feelings just blocked and bottled up, stuffed deeper and deeper inside until we're ready to burst. You can imagine the pressure. Our thoughts are spinning and we feel out of control. So letting out the frustrations and frankly the fears is a must, because holding on to the hurt and the pain, it keeps us in fight or flight mode. We can also experience an internal manifestation of our pain in the form of an ailment or a disease. So sharing, venting is connecting with others. It's one of the most basic human drives that we have in common. And without connection, we suffer from loneliness and depression and feelings of unworthiness. When we vent, we are being vulnerable. And being vulnerable is how we connect. Being vulnerable and venting is powerful. It's courageous and generous. Sharing can help not only us, but others who are struggling just to figure out the complicated, intertwined emotions that surface when we care so deeply, and yet can be confounded by the challenges of caring for our family member. So regularly sharing our stories, our pain, and our grief, it allows us to express and expel the bottled up worry and anxiety. It's an act of self-care that can make us feel lighter and less burdened. So don't repress the stress. It's not always that easy. Being vulnerable is hard because there are some significant barriers to opening up and sharing. We feel shame. We don't want others to know that we are struggling. Maybe we vented before and we felt judged. Being vulnerable is powerful. And at the same time, when we share our most intimate thoughts, we can suffer from what Brene Brown calls a vulnerability hangover and initially feel regret and worry. What will people think? We might question ourselves. Am I a horrible person for having these thoughts? Well, the answer is a resounding no. Your thoughts are normal. You show up and you learn and you grow from each experience. The cure for a vulnerability hangover is to embrace your vulnerability and celebrate the courage you demonstrated. You're managing extreme circumstances and just doing the best you can. Now, there is a flip side to venting. We can get stuck in the negative patterns. So the way to tell if venting is helping or hurting us is to tune in to how you feel after sharing. So if you don't feel better after purging the negative thoughts and emotions, the crucial processing piece may be missing, and a different listener may be a better ventee. Now, I know that is not a word, but it works so well here. So if our ventee is a friend or a relative and we are close to them, maybe we're stuck in the mud together and complaining is our default way to relate. Another reason venting may not be working is that we are burned out. If we are physically and emotionally exhausted, venting may not help us feel better immediately. As we move back to a more sustainable experience by focusing on self-care and prioritizing our well-being, we'll find that regularly releasing the pressure is physical and emotional maintenance that keeps us healthy. It's also possible to be just as caught off guard by our explosive emotional release as the person receiving our frustration and anger. We often don't realize how much pressure we are under until it's too late. Or we wait too long between venting sessions and our frustration level will impede the processing step. We're so angry that we can't think clearly. So these are all reasons why routine scheduled venting sessions are so important. So one or more of these options can offer an opportunity to unload, receive essential validation, connect, and know that you are not alone. Support groups can provide a chance to communicate with various caregivers who can relate to the challenges and the stresses of caregiving. Learning and sharing with others in a safe space, it will help you explore your thoughts, your emotions, reactions, fears, and your options. You feel relief when your frustrations are not just heard, but understood and validated. Another good venting option can be a professional, such as a counselor, a therapist, a clergy member, or a caregiver consultant or coach. Finding the right fit is key, and as with many aspects of caregiving, trial and error will lead you to the best solution for your situation. The next two venting opportunities should be approached with awareness and caution. So the key is to locate a listener who gets what you're going through, someone who hears you and validates that the struggle is real. Friends and family can be the best and sometimes the worst venting allies. The way to know if someone is a good venting ally is if they offer support that feels supportive, or do their responses seem disengaged, or worse, insensitive. So forgiveness serves us well when we feel a lack of support and we've been disappointed by members of our inner circle. I remember sharing a frustration about a resealable bag of blueberries to a friend who wasn't a caregiver, and my frustration was about more than blueberries. But at the time, I was ready to die on Blueberry Hill. She looked at me and she said, "Really? Blueberries?" with a distinct tone of judgment. And I learned a valuable lesson that day. She was a good friend, just not a good venting ally. I shared the same story to a group of caregivers and they got it. They let out a resounding confirmation that these little grievances can be maddening, the straw that breaks us when we're at our limits. So when I looked at why I felt regret for sharing my frustration with my friend, it wasn't what I shared that caused the regret. It was how I was perceived, and how I was perceived caused me to feel shame. So social media offers an opportunity to connect with fellow family caregivers. There are online Facebook support groups, but it can be challenging with written communication to interpret tone and empathy. Advice and opinions may be offered in ways that feel judgmental, disrespectful, and just not supportive. So as with all stress relieving resources, these groups may serve you well during specific segments of your caregiving journey, and then you may need to set them aside during other times. So now for the homework. Think about how you currently release frustrations and how do you feel after you share these challenges and the difficulties. You could write about a challenging episode and describe about how you felt before, during, and after the interaction. So reflection and processing may provide a different perspective or a helpful insight. And then if you're currently using a method to vent that works well, incorporate it into a routine and protect the practice with boundaries so you're consistently letting it out. If you've not yet found an effective method of venting, maybe select one of the options we discussed and experiment to discover what works best for you so you can release the uncomfortable emotions and feel empowered. So before we look at journaling, another way to release the stressful thoughts and emotions, Linda, do we have any comments or questions in the question and answer box? Okay, we'll check back in a minute. So let's move on. So waterfalls lead to rainbows, and letting our thoughts spill out onto the page can lead to a better understanding of what's going on behind the scenes and hopefully lead to a brighter outlook. Well, why is journaling important? Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, said, "I don't journal to be productive. I don't do it to find great ideas or put down prose I can later publish. The pages aren't intended for anyone but me. It's the most cost-effective therapy I've ever found." So journaling thoughts and exploring them with curiosity and objectivity is a form of venting, and it can be quite therapeutic. Writing offers a release and a reprieve from the swirling sensations. The opportunity to reflect can help you stay focused and productive during a time when both focus and productivity fluctuate from minute to minute. Keeping a journal will enable you to process the complexities of caregiving, the emotions, the fear, the confusion. And when you lean into the overwhelm of caregiving and face the scary feelings and force them to take off their mask, the fear behind the thought is revealed and it's less scary. In addition, processing our thoughts and emotions, journaling helps us with problem solving and working through disagreements with others. This raw self-reflection and self-awareness can be healing. Caregiving changes us. We grow stronger, and at times we feel like we will break, but we don't. We develop skills and superpowers. We learn resilience and we become wiser. And we may not see our growth as it's happening. You'll have a record of the experience, a travel journal that documents the caregiving journey, a powerful reminder of your strength. It will shine a light on the growth and how far you've traveled. You can think of the memories as your travel souvenirs. Now, there are barriers to journaling. Taking the time to journal can feel like one more to do on a long list. So working it into our self-care breaks and routines can turn it into a habit. And once you experience the benefits, it will become something you look forward to and make time for. Now, a blank page can be intimidating, and there's no right or wrong way to journal. And when you start writing, the words will just flow from your mind and from your heart. But you may not want these scary thoughts recorded because you can't imagine what would people think if they read them. We often feel shame about these thoughts and emotions, and a journal is a safe place to store them. You may decide to read your journals and can look back with self-compassion. The clarity that comes from distance may help you better understand the challenges and the resulting emotions. Now, keeping a gratitude journal is recommended. It helps us find perspective. It inspires us to appreciate and value the little things. When we're in a dark place, burned out, and feeling completely overwhelmed, trying to find gratitude in our experience is a tall order. And when we can't, it can feel like another failure. I used to say that my gratitude journal was broken. It's okay to hold off journaling gratitude until you are ready. One way to get started is to write everything that comes to mind, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions. Just get it all out. Include all the ugly details. Then write specific grievances. Focus on yourself and the impact that the conflict has had on you. Next, write about how these words or thoughts make you feel. Again, be specific. Now you're ready to set boundaries around your limits. Your power is in these limits. You might journal your intention and how the boundary setting conversation will unfold. So this is just one example of how journaling can help reduce stress. Your journal will take the form that best serves you, so let it unfold organically. In addition to the things that frustrate us, we can write about the fun and the funny moments. We can look back and smile and remember that it wasn't all fear and frustration. With distance and perspective, even some of the most frustrating moments will be remembered with fondness, and we'll see humor that wasn't evident at the time. And when you're ready, you can journal about the things you are grateful for. I would challenge you to not just find gratitude in the experience, but gratitude for the experience, which is how I fixed my broken gratitude journal. So if you were to keep a journal of your caregiving journey, what would it look like? Would it include anecdotes, maybe an exploration of the emotions, poetry, drawings? Would it be handwritten, typed, kept on an app? Would you add photos or videos? So later, spend some time visualizing your journal. Now, the negative emotions are normal and natural and very painful. Using your journal, just begin to identify and explore the negative emotions that come to the surface throughout the day. If you don't already have a journal, choose one that will inspire you to fill it with a record of your caregiving journey. So next, we're going to explore how we can release pain and resentment with forgiveness. The list of who and what to forgive is as unique as each family caregiver and their circumstances. Our care recipient may inspire us to forgive past, present, and future grievances. Siblings and close family members may have let you down. Employer systems or healthcare systems may have caused us grief. It's important not to confuse the limitations of the process with the people who are a part of the process. While systems may have been broken, the helpers in the systems are not the systems themselves. In the same way, society can be helpful and hindering at the same time. During the first few years caring for Dad, I was angry at society. I felt the expectations to care for an aging family member without adequate support was unfair. As Dad's caregiver, it felt like I wore an invisibility cloak. My identity became someone who is an extension of Dad, whose purpose was to manage his care. I blame society for our inability to have aging and end-of-life conversations. So the good news is that there is no shortage of opportunity to practice forgiveness, and practice will hone our skills and form our forgiveness muscles. So why is forgiveness important? Well, Shannon Alder, author of 300 Questions to Ask Your Parents Before It's Too Late, said, "Anger and jealousy doesn't change the hearts of others, it only changes yours." So this is why resentment is disempowering. It's possible to spend an enormous amount of time and energy on anger and resentment. The problem with resentment is that it eats away at us from the inside, and it keeps our focus on grudges and grievances. The word grudge comes from the word grumble, and we can get stuck grumbling, which has a negative impact on our physical and our emotional health. Resentment takes precious time away from what matters. As we mentioned at the last conference, resentment means to feel again. So resentment is replaying, reliving something that made us angry. Something made you angry and you felt it was unfair and it needed to change. Over time, it didn't change and the anger turned hard. So anger is something is going on that is unfair and it needs to change. Resentment is nothing is going to change. And it's affecting my mental health. Resentment is an addictive state of mind, and it only gives us the illusion of control. And it's toxic, and it only hurts ourselves. Resentment saps our energy, and it clouds our perceptions and perspective. Recognizing this is the first step in forgiving and letting go. If forgiveness doesn't come easy, practice smaller acts of forgiveness and then build up to the bigger acts. This is important for our well-being because forgiving releases resentment and it frees our hearts and our minds. When we forgive, we're not condoning what has occurred, but we're no longer defined by the wrongs that have been committed. We can acknowledge and feel the pain, accept what has happened, and decide to let the resentment and the pain go. Our hearts feel lighter when we no longer carry the burden of anxiety and negative emotions. So even if we acknowledge all of the benefits of forgiveness, it can still be hard. And it's understandable. We resist because it's not fair. We've been wronged. It can feel like we're giving up control over how we are viewed, how we view ourselves. It feels like giving up our identity. We identify as the person who is wronged, and without that identity, we risk losing the sympathy and understanding that we deserve. Our anger and resentment is a plea for empathy and validation, two things that are in short supply in our caregiving world. And then we may resist forgiving ourselves because we feel unworthy, we feel shame, and feel that we deserve the blame. So in the midst of all this pain, how do we let go? Well, the first step in the forgiveness process is to feel the hurt. And we can describe the pain in our journal. The second step is to assess the event from all perspectives, including from the offender's point of view. When we can understand that we're all limited by our conditioning, we may realize that we all do our best given our circumstances, our ego constraints, and our personal limits. Finally, we need to detach from the story. And that doesn't mean that we forget, but that the memory no longer inspires negative emotion. So we can start with ourselves Caregiving responsibilities are complex and mistakes are inevitable. We're often navigating complex systems under emotionally charged circumstances. It's common to feel like we aren't strong enough or smart enough to manage the challenges. We can be hard on ourselves when things don't go as planned. Dwelling on our mistakes can cause us to lose sleep and suffer from other adverse effects of stress. Resilience and self-forgiveness are crucial so we can continue with confidence. When I assessed how I might forgive myself, I recognized that I felt guilty for being reactive, deficiently proactive, making mistakes, and for misunderstanding. Journaling the insights and the lessons learned and the changes needed allowed me to shift from self-criticism to a place of self-compassion. So I acknowledged that I did the best I could. Now I was empowered with information that would help me do better the next time. We said that releasing resentment frees our hearts and minds, but the true path to freedom comes from self-compassion, from self-love. It's love for ourselves that will compel us to let go of grudges against others and judgments against ourselves. So let self-compassion be your compass. Small daily acts will help us become more skilled at demonstrating empathy and forgiveness, which are closely connected. So practice will help us rewire our brains to be prepared so that we may undertake more challenging forgiveness opportunities. We can replace resentment with relief and gratitude. When we practice forgiveness, we cut our ties to the past and place our attention on the present as we let go of what no longer serves us. Think about the last time that you felt injured. Does this event take up space in your mind? How would it feel to be at peace? In your journal, you can explore what you've done that you might forgive and why you deserve to be forgiven. Who else might you forgive? Describe how each act of forgiveness might unfold. Abby Fabiaske, author of I Liked My Life, Practice Love, said, Abby Fabiaske, sorry, that name always trips me up. Fabiaske, author of I Liked My Life, said, practice love, compassion, and forgiveness. Anger is nothing but an anchor that keeps you from moving forward. And I love the image of an anchor and the idea that we can cut the chain by releasing resentment. And it reminds us that forgiving is not passive, but a courageous act that helps us reclaim control. It's control over our thoughts and our energy. So you could use this quote as a journal prompt and explore how forgiving can help you regain control over the turbulent thoughts and emotions. And then begin practicing forgiveness. Look for opportunities to apply empathy and compassion and forgive yourself and others. And then feel the release that comes from letting go the burden of blame. So next, we're going to move on to how planning can help us let go of the worries and release the anxiety. Do you want to check in, Linda? Do we have any comments or questions?
We're good, but I have to tell you, a young lady just sent me a text message and she said, I'm crying listening to this because forgiveness has changed my life. And I just recently realized how to do it. And that's my heart. And I asked her if I could mention her story for a second. She contacted me about 3 months ago and said, my mom was the perfect mother until I was 14 years old. She said that my mom got in a car accident and got addicted to opiates. And she said, then she was the worst mother ever. She said, so as soon as I was old enough, I left the house. She said, fast forward 25 years later, I'm taking care of my mother with Alzheimer's. She said, and my mother's angry and I'm angry and nothing I was suggesting was working. And then I called her one morning and I said, tell me about a really, really special time with your mom. And she said, you know, when I used to come home from school, my mom used to brush my hair. And she still has long hair. And I said, do you think you could go to your mom and say, Mom, nobody ever brushed my hair like you did. Can you please brush my hair? And she said to me, I don't know if I can do that, Linda. I'm not sure if I'm up to that yet. Well, anyway, it started 6 weeks ago, and every afternoon at 4 o'clock now, her mother brushes her hair. She said, and I get to be the little girl and she gets to be the mom. and we're trying to forget about all the other stuff that happened. But when she texted me today, she said, it's not just forgetting about it, it's forgiving. So thank you for that, Theresa, because it's so, so important that we forgive others and that we forgive ourselves.
Yes, it just can change the trajectory of our journey. And we do want to remember that, it's a challenging experience. Not everybody's up to be involved in caregiving, and they aren't able to necessarily support us in the ways that we would like to see them, step in
Right.
and show support. But when we can recognize that everyone has their limits and recognize that our relationship with them is valuable, then it's something that we can just accept, and maybe they can help in other ways.
Right.
But I found just with my brother, he wasn't as involved as I would have liked. And but I also recognized that, he was doing the best he could do. I was doing the best I could do. I wanted to make sure that he and I had a good relationship, when caregiving was over
Yeah.
after we lost our dad. So that was what motivated me. And it helped. It does change your heart to to be in a better place and better space. And I had to forgive dad. To be honest, I thought, oh my gosh, he did go through all this. I found his journals later and saw that he had experienced a lot of these same emotions that I was struggling with. And I thought,
Wow.
why didn't we have that conversation?
Yeah.
But I mean, I can understand time passes and he probably just forgot. And then all of a sudden he's maybe in the worst place he's ever been in his life.
Right.
He's aging. He's lost so many friends, family, abilities. I'm at the worst place I've been in my life. So this is really setting us up for the perfect storm when we're caring for our family member.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that and having empathy for him and just letting all of that go. It's hard to have these conversations. It was hard for me to have, the end of life conversations with dad. So I can imagine just, it's just something
Yeah.
that, yeah, it can help us have, like I said, a more meaningful journey when we can.
And just remember, we're all human and we're all the same. We're all really the same. We want to be loved. We want our health. We want a roof over our head. We may have different hobbies, different ideas, but basically we're exactly the same. And when we can realize that, we can be so much more open and understanding and compassionate to others, including ourselves.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that compassion for ourselves is really key, because we have to give ourselves a break. We're dealing with a lot of tough stuff. And just each day we can wake up and try to do better. And yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just
well,
give
let's move.
yourself a little hug in the morning when you look in the mirror.
Yes, I love
Right.
that.
Continue, my friend.
All right, thanks, Linda. So let's explore how to create your itinerary, plan for adventure, and prepare for a few side trips. In caregiving, as we said, the worries are real and often become a reality. Worrying about the what ifs can cause a lot of overwhelming stress. Caregiving intensity increases over time, and when a crisis arrives, it can feel like we're drowning. If we don't have a plan and we haven't identified the resources we might need, then we're searching for help while underwater. So having a plan reduces the worry, and when we make a plan, often a plan A, B, and C, we can stop the fretting. So research will lead us to resources, and the answers will lead us to more questions until we fill in the vastness of the what if with a strategy. We can set the worry aside and focus on the present. We feel prepared and empowered. So your power to release the worries lies in the plan. It's natural to resist planning for the worries. We are busy managing the day-to-day overwhelm, and the reality is we'd rather not think about it. So we avoid facing our fears directly, while they might conspire under the surface to undermine our peace of mind. Another reason we resist planning and preparing for the foreboding events is that the conversations can be uncomfortable. It's important to include our loved one in the conversation, as well as other family members, and family dynamics can be complicated. In addition, there may be a financial cost involved, which adds layers of complexity to any plan. So we can plan for the unexpected as well as the expected side trips, the transitions. That's not to say that we won't be completely blindsided by an event that we never could have anticipated. But expected events include changes and transitions that will be required to increased mobility or vision challenges, maybe driving restrictions, increased care needs, assistance with financial or medical affairs. We also might be in an area that has a heightened threat of fires, hurricanes, or flooding. And a plan, it can reduce the worry around how we would manage an evacuation. So determine the goal of the plan. Is the focus prevention or a possible occurrence or both? What preventative steps are needed? And if your worry comes to fruition, what is needed to manage the situation? Including your care recipient in the planning when possible is ideal. Each discussion will not be a one and done conversation, and getting to win-win requires that you maximize empathy and minimize ego. So demonstrate vulnerability and compassion and be curious. The goal is to keep the channels of communication open. Consult with legal, financial, and medical professionals. Consulting with an elder law attorney like Sean Scott, who we just heard from, before making certain commitments can prevent a host of future problems. A session with a financial advisor may illuminate alternative options. A medical professional can help you better understand disease progression, which can help with preparation and planning details. It would be nice to have a crystal ball to predict when our plan is ready to be put into play. We don't have a crystal ball, but with awareness, we can read the water to anticipate transitions. And our plan will make navigating these transitions flow much more smoothly. So a few examples. Suppose mom has fallen a few times and fortunately sustained only scratches and bruises. Or her home is usually immaculate and the refrigerator well stocked and organized. But lately you notice dust and clutter and expired food in the fridge. Or mom has managed finances on her own and you know little about the status of her financial affairs. And recently you noticed a few past due payment notifications sitting on the kitchen table. So if we read the river, we see that another fall may result in a hospitalization. So what changes could be made in the home to create safer spaces? How would we manage post-hospitalization demands? Spoiled food may soon cause an illness. Is it time for help with meals and housekeeping? Is a banking error or even more concerning fraud possibly on the horizon? Are vision challenges the culprit? What low vision aids are available? We can begin to ask questions about finances, learn the status of credit card accounts, and identify the location of bank accounts and insurance policy paperwork. We can prepare to monitor and eventually take over the responsibility of bill paying. Ideally, the conversation about the available options will take place long before the need presents itself. So the most challenging transition can be at the end of our caregiving journey. And if we begin with the end in mind, and end of life conversations is where we start the planning process. We're all on a journey to a common destination, end of life, and we're helping our family member who is further along on that journey. When we first acknowledge and explore our thoughts and fears around aging and end of life, it can be easier to initiate the conversations with our loved ones. So planning for the expected side trips is tricky, and the best we can do is know who we can reach out to for support when we are facing that waterfall. And then it will be crucial to modify self-care activities so you continue to invest in your well-being as you navigate this unexpected transition. When you come up for air, what research and preparation can help you face the new future empowered with a plan? I can remember during Dad's first hospitalization, I came out of that experience completely wrecked, and we had a lot more work ahead of us. And what I learned from that experience was to go into the next hospitalization, which was unexpected. It wasn't planned, but I did know that I needed to modify self-care activities. And so by modifying self-care activities and still working in meditation in the morning and stretching in the evening and journaling while I was sitting in the hospital room and other things that I did to continue to focus on my well-being, I came through that hospitalization prepared to manage what was happening next. So these are ways that we can plan, even though we're not expecting something that might be right in front of us. So to get started using this strategy, think about your greatest worry at the moment and what are the possible outcomes? What knowledge or information would allow you to worry less? And in your journal, explore what questions need to be asked and answered for you to begin to formulate a plan to prepare for that reality. Maybe start to list where you might find those answers or resources, and whom can you contact for direction. And then reach out to a resource. Begin asking the questions and filling in the gaps of the plan to address your greatest worries. As worries arise, log them in your journal and then begin the process again. So Linda, if we don't have questions, we'll just continue on to the end. Well, here is a quick look at how to manage the swirl of caregiver emotions and how these 4 strategies fit together.
I'm sorry I didn't unmute myself. I just want to say that the only comments we have so far is this is fabulous. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm really glad it's connecting.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so here's a quick look at how to manage the swirl of caregiver emotions and how these 4 strategies fit together to help us express the stress. So we've talked about just 4 of the strategies today, but as we said, there are more. And when you work out how the strategies fit together for you and your situation, then you begin to develop a stable, solid, yet fluid ecosystem, because the river is ever changing and your support system and your strategies must also be fluid and flexible to evolve with your ever changing needs. Now imagine all of the strategies in your toolkit working together to support you and your unique experience. Your support system becomes stable when the strategies fit you, your situation, and fit together. Here's a quick look at how that works. So a parting wish for you, may you flow from the present moment and experience vitality when you tap into the source of the river's power and grace.
Thank you so much, Theresa. A woman just sent in a message and she said, I can't tell you how this resonates with me. She said, I had a hard time asking for help or anything. She said, my both of my parents are in a community, but I'm still their full-time caregiver. And I'm taking care of my own family plus my grandchildren. She
Oh,
said, so I finally sat down and thought about how I could accept help. She said, because my parents don't like the food where they live, so they always want me to bring them up dinner. She said, so I had a little meeting and my one niece is bringing them dinner every Monday night. And one of my neighbors is bringing them dinner every Tuesday night. And she said, I can't tell you. And other people said, yeah, I'll do that too. And she says, I can't tell you how much stress that has taken off of me. She said, because now I can make dinner for my family and then go visit them later when everything's peaceful.
oh, that's
So,
wonderful.
it's those little ways that we need to think about how we can accept help,
That's so true. Yes.
because people want to help you.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, accepting help is one of the strategies, and it's not easy. I mean, first we have to accept that we need help, and
Yeah.
yeah, and just like, we talk about journaling being, it can feel like another to do on the list. Well, if folks have asked us, and I think you mentioned this, you mention it frequently, you might have mentioned it yesterday. If folks say, what can I do to help? Then we feel overwhelmed with having to answer that question. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
But and I too, and I love the journaling. I think journaling is so important, even if you're just doing it just to keep a history.
Yeah.
Because I go through some of my journals and I forgot that happened, or I
Yep.
forgot about this. Some I wanted to forget about. Some I'm very happy I got to read again and find some joy in it.
Yeah. I looked back, I remember I wrote, almost from the beginning, and I got to a better place. And I did look back at some of what I wrote because I wanted to remember, why it was so challenging. And I read it, but it was with a distance and perspective that it was almost like I was reading somebody else's story.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I understood why I felt how I felt when I read it. And I was able to give myself some grace. And I also recognized how much assumptions fueled the fear, and assumptions all fueled these emotions.
yeah.
And it was, I was in a better place at that point, having put into practice some of these strategies. But yeah, journaling, it was a great place to process the emotion. And then it helped me even later. And, if we decide not to read our journals, that's fine.
Right.
But yeah, but like you said, if we do, it can be a wonderful record.
Well, one of my caregivers said to me recently, Linda, I don't have any time to journal, but what I do is when I have the opportunity and I get to take a walk in the park, I just chalk it into my phone. She goes, I chalk it into my phone. And she goes, for a long time, I didn't even read it. I think I just felt better just getting it out. She
Mm-hmm.
said, but then recently I started reading it and I was like, realized after a while, wow, I'm doing better than I was doing last month. Or
Oh,
I'm doing better than I was doing 6 months ago.
yes. And you bring up a great point. There's an article I just saw recently. I mean, that's certainly a way you could keep a journal. I mean, you could just do recordings. You wouldn't even have to, because we can
Right.
record to text, but you could just record, and that might be your journal. And that works for some people who are intimidated by that blank page.
Well, another girl told me too recently. She said, so I started journaling. She said, my mother asked me, what are you doing?
Ah,
And she said, I'm journaling. And her mother said, I want to do that too.
oh,
Well, her mom can't really write anymore. So now every day at some time of the day, they have a specific time. She just sits with her mom and her mom just tells her stories or tells her how she feels. And they kind of share that experience together. She said, and my closeness to my mother has become so much stronger.
oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I love
because
that. I don't know if I shared with you, Linda, during the pandemic, I would sit with Dad. We became his everything. We're caring for him, his social
yeah,
interaction, everything. And he had kept journals, and I had a stack, and he had kept them since I was a child. I remember him writing them. Well, he had taken some of them, transcribed them, and like made like short versions, but he still had some full versions from the last decade. So
wow,
I went through and read his journals with him. I sat there and read to him what he wrote, and we talked about it. And I got to his caregiving years and it was surreal. So it was really fantastic to be able to get some backstories about what he had written, but it's just a real special period.
Yeah, well, what she said is, if this hasn't happened, I never would have had these conversations with my mother.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. Yeah, yeah.
She said, and like one time her mother was just having a conversation with her about when she was born. She said, and my mother never really had like a deep conversation with me about when I was born, like, oh my goodness, I got into the delivery room, I was so nervous, or anything like
Oh,
that.
oh,
So
that's so special.
yeah, it's so special for both of them.
For both of them. Well, I learned some shocking things that I had no idea about dad. Here he is, like, what, 97, 98, and I'm finding out that he was engaged to someone else before mom. I found out that his middle name he was named after like the one who got away from my grandmother, from his mom. And it's like, what? So yeah, it was pretty fascinating. I never knew where our conversations were going to lead.
Yeah, so I encourage everybody to be open to that. And you know what? Thanksgiving's coming soon, and you could just start some conversations around the table. And around the table might just be you and two other people, or it might just be you and one other person. But have that conversation, and let for the people that are listening, that are the people that are being cared for, let the person that's caring for you know how much you appreciate them, because we don't say thank you enough about that. Most of us, because we just get into that routine and we're just used to, my daughter's going to do this for me, or my husband's going to do this for me, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I find I love the month of November because it's filled with gratitude, and it's caregiver month and everything else too. But
Yeah.
I just found the other day when I was going through some things, a little box, and then it was little index cards, and it has to be from a Thanksgiving past. And one was my granddaughter writing, I love the way my brother smiles. And her brother writing, I love the way she helps me with my homework, or whatever kind of thing. Because I would make them sit down at dinner, and each person had to write something nice about the people around the table.
Oh,
And I just was tearful when I opened it.
yeah.
It was so wonderful. So please
Oh,
take note of this, everybody. Please check out Theresa's book, Navigating the Caregiver River, and get on her email list, because she does all sorts of other cool things.
and the podcast is available, and that's something folks can listen to, when they have
Yes.
5 minutes here and there. It's Self-Caregiving Strategies podcast. So yeah, lots of good ways to access these strategies. On the website, you can get the 12 free sustainable caregiving strategies you can download, sign up for the newsletter and then download the 12 free sustainable caregiving strategies ebook. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you for being with me, my friend. I love you.
Thank you, Linda. Love you too.
Have a delicious day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.